Before we dive in, do you believe redemption is real? Do you believe a person who's lost their way can still hear God's whisper through the noise of success and pride? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories of faith, love, and second chances. The city was shining that night. Marble floors, champagne laughter, and a woman they never expected to see. Olivia Parker, once just an assistant, walked into the Astoria Grand in a pink gown that glowed like sunrise after a storm. At the edge of the ballroom, Victoria Hale smirked. "A rose," she said, "that bloomed in the wrong garden." But Olivia only smiled. "At least I'm still blooming." No one in that room knew that before the night was over, the world would remember her name. And a simple line, "Elegance is not proving you're better than someone. It's inspiring them to be better than they were," would ignite a miracle no headline could explain. Because sometimes God doesn't choose the powerful to speak. He chooses the humble and lets their light do the talking. The rain had been falling all afternoon, tracing silver threads down the glass walls of Reed and Benton, Capitol's Midtown office. The city outside was a blur of umbrellas and honking taxis, a restless ocean of ambition reflected in every pane of glass. Inside, the air smelled of roasted coffee and tension. At the long mahogany table sat Michael Reed, 37, tall and sharply built, the kind of man sculpted by success and sleepless nights. His black hair was trimmed neatly, his jaw perpetually shadowed with stubble that made him look both tired and dangerous. He had the eyes of a man who had once believed in something pure, then traded it for quarterly reports and profit margins. The faint scar near his left temple from a car accident 10 years ago made him seem even more distant, as if part of him had never left that night behind. Across from him lounged Victoria Hale, 32, all diamonds and control. Her platinum blonde hair was pinned in a perfect twist, her red lipstick flawless. She smiled with the slow cruelty of someone who'd never been told no. A former socialite turned public relations guru, Victoria had learned early that charm was a weapon, and she used it with surgical precision. "Michael," she said sweetly, resting her manicured hand on the table, "if you want Reed and Benton to look modern, invite your assistant to the gala. It'll make you seem democratic." The other partners chuckled. Harold Benton, a man in his 60s with a booming voice and a gah full of self-importance, smirked behind his glasses. Ethan Cole, younger, ambitious, and always too eager to please, tapped his pen on the table like a hyena waiting for scraps. Michael didn't look up from the stack of contracts. "All employees are invited," he said flatly. From the far end of the room, Olivia Parker lifted her gaze. She was 34, with chestnut brown hair tied in a modest bun and calm, steady eyes the color of oak bark after rain. Her posture was straight, almost regal, a quiet defiance wrapped in courtesy. Her skin was olive-toned, her expression unreadable. Yet her silence carried a weight that made people uneasy. Beside her sat Ranger, her 6-year-old German shepherd, fur a deep black and tan, eyes sharp amber like autumn light. His ears twitched once, catching the sharp edge in Victoria's tone. The dog's calm mirrored Olivia's, both dignified, both out of place in this polished glass jungle. Victoria's smile curved. "How adorable," she murmured. "Will your friend be attending too?" Ethan snickered. "Perhaps he'll guard the hors d'oeuvres." Olivia didn't rise to it. She simply closed her notebook and said softly, "Ranger has better manners than most people I know." The room stiffened. Michael finally looked up. Just a glance, but in that fleeting moment, something flickered behind his tired gray eyes. Guilt? Admiration? He couldn't tell. The meeting ended in awkward laughter. That night, Olivia walked home through mist and neon. Her apartment was small, overlooking a quiet street in the Upper West Side. Ranger shook off raindrops by the door, then sat by the window as she boiled water for tea. Her sister Maddie called, 26, fiery-haired and spirited, a journalism student who believed the world could still be fixed. "Big day?" Maddie asked, her voice echoing through the phone. Olivia sighed, staring at the city lights beyond her window. "They invited me to the company gala." "That's good, isn't it?" "It's not an invitation," Olivia said quietly. "It's a test. They want to see if I'll know my place, or forget it." Maddie was silent for a heartbeat, then laughed softly. "Then don't go as their assistant. Go as their reminder." Olivia smiled despite herself. "How poetic of you." "That's me," Maddie teased. "The broke poet who believes in her brilliant sister." After the call, Olivia opened her closet. Between her work jackets and modest blouses hung a single dress wrapped in plastic. A pink evening gown, soft yet radiant, the color of sunrise reflected in champagne. Her late mother's gift, bought for a future Olivia never dared to imagine. She touched the fabric gently, remembering her mother's words. "A woman doesn't wear color to be noticed. She wears it to remember she's alive." Ranger watched her quietly, head tilted. "What do you think?" she murmured. "Too much?" He wagged his tail once, slow and solemn. Approval. The next morning, the office buzzed with whispers. An internal email had been leaked, written by Ethan. "Let's hope someone doesn't bring her dog to the gala. We wouldn't want a mess on the carpet." Olivia read it twice. Then she clicked Reply All. Ranger is a certified service dog, registered under state law. I trust our firm's esteemed partners can tell the difference between a pet and a partner. She pressed send. The click echoed like a gunshot. Outside her cubicle, silence spread like ripples in still water. Then came the faint shuffle of retreating footsteps. No one spoke to her for the rest of the morning. By dusk, when the sky had turned bruise blue over Manhattan, she returned home to find a small envelope slid beneath her door. Heavy paper. Expensive ink. She opened it carefully. "Looking forward to meeting you on Saturday. P. Laurent." The name stirred something faintly familiar. She didn't know whether to smile or worry. Ranger lifted his head, eyes questioning. Olivia knelt beside him, fingers sinking into his thick fur. "It seems," she whispered, "the night's going to be longer than we thought." The rain started again, whispering against the window like a promise or a warning. The ballroom of the Astoria Grand Hotel glowed like a cathedral made of glass and light. Crystal chandeliers hung in constellations above velvet drapes, and every laugh sounded rehearsed. Manhattan's elite had gathered, a sea of tuxedos, champagne, and whispered vanity. At the center of this glittering storm stood Victoria Hale, flawless as always. Her golden gown shimmered like molten metal, her posture sharp as a blade. Tonight, she was the hostess, and her smile was a crown sharpened by envy. She scanned the entrance, waiting. She wanted to see it. The moment Olivia Parker, the quiet assistant, stepped into her world and drowned in its brightness. But when Olivia entered, silence fell instead. She stood in the doorway, bathed in the golden wash of chandelier light, wearing a flowing pink evening gown that seemed to hold its own light, a hue both delicate and commanding. The fabric rippled with each step she took, catching the glint of crystal like morning dew. Her chestnut hair, usually tied in a knot at the office, now framed her face in soft waves. And beside her, calm and majestic, walked Ranger, his black and tan coat gleaming under the chandeliers. The crowd parted instinctively. Victoria's laughter sliced through the hush. "How lovely," she said, voice dripping honey and venom. "A rose among marble." Olivia's eyes, dark, steady, unafraid, met hers. "At least," she said quietly, I'm still capable of blooming. Gasps rippled like falling glass. A few guests exchanged amused glances. Others turned away, uncomfortable. Across the room, Michael Reed watched the exchange. He was in his black tuxedo, crisp and perfect, yet something inside him shifted. He had seen Olivia in gray cubicle light. Now she stood before him, transformed, not by the dress, but by dignity. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar, shame for the laughter he had ignored. From near the champagne tower, a man stepped forward, distinguished, silver-haired, with eyes like old wine. He moved with the poise of one accustomed to respect. Olivia Parker? His accent was unmistakably French. Olivia turned, startled. Yes? The man smiled warmly. Pierre Laurent. We met once in Queens. You presented the literacy project, yeah? You taught immigrant families to read in 3 languages. Whispers rose again, startled, uncertain. Olivia inclined her head. I only helped coordinate it, Mr. Laurent. The volunteers did the real work. Nonsense. His voice was gentle but commanding. A single candle can light 100 more. He turned to the crowd. Do you know how many children she helped? Hundreds. Some now in college because of her program. The silence that followed was not the same as before. It was heavier. Victoria's smile faltered. Ethan Cole, standing near the buffet, turned pale, clutching his drink. Harold Benton shifted uneasily, his old hands tightening around his glass of scotch. A young waiter carrying desserts slipped on a patch of spilled champagne. Gasps erupted. But before the tray could crash, Ranger leapt forward. He pressed his body under the boy's falling hand, steadying him. Nothing broke, not a single glass. Applause burst like rain. Someone exclaimed, "Smart dog," and laughter followed. Not cruel this time, but genuine. Olivia bent down, whispering, "Good boy." Ranger wagged his tail once, then sat upright, ever the soldier. Pierre Laurent chuckled. Even your companion has manners. Michael felt the back of his throat tighten. There she was, quiet and unarmed, winning the room without playing the game. As the evening stretched on, a man with a camera approached, Thomas Green, mid-40s, a journalist from the New York Chronicle. He was tall and wiry, his gray beard trimmed short, his eyes bright with curiosity and fatigue. Years of covering politics had made him cynical. But something about Olivia's calm made him reach for his recorder. "Miss Parker," he said, "you've just been praised by one of Europe's biggest investors. What's your secret?" Olivia paused, her gaze soft but clear. "There's no secret," she said. "If you see value in people, they start to see it in themselves." Thomas tilted his head. "Then tell me, what is elegance?" For a moment, she looked around at the chandeliers, the tuxedos, the glittering rings, then back to him. "Elegance," she said, "is not proving you're better than someone. It's inspiring them to be better than they were." The ballroom froze. The hum of gossip evaporated. Someone whispered, "She's right." Victoria turned away, face stiff as porcelain. Michael's heart pounded. He didn't know why, but her words struck something buried deep, beneath layers of ambition and silence. Thomas lowered his camera, almost reverent. "Thank you," he said quietly, and slipped away. As the orchestra resumed, Michael moved closer to Olivia, though he didn't speak. He just watched, the way her shoulders held grace, the way Ranger sat at her heel, loyal and steady. She didn't need a stage. She was the stage, and the light found her naturally. When she turned, their eyes met. Neither smiled. They didn't need to. For the first time, Michael Reed understood what true beauty was. Not perfection polished by wealth, but courage carried with gentleness. And as the night went on, he realized the game had changed forever. By Monday morning, the storm had arrived. Not a storm of rain, but of headlines, flashing screens, and endless phone calls. The sleek glass building of Reed and Benton, Capital, gleamed under the morning sun. Yet inside, chaos reigned. Every television in the lobby was tuned to the same segment. The lady in pink and her hero dog, a night the elite won't forget. Clips from the gala replayed again and again. Olivia in her pink gown helping the young waiter, Ranger's poised figure steadying the tray. And that single quote that had become a nationwide mantra: "Elegance is not proving you're better than someone. It's inspiring them to be better than they were." Some called her the modern-day Grace Kelly. Others, the voice of humility in high heels. Hashtags trended. Memes bloomed. Olivia's face was suddenly everywhere. But upstairs, on the 42nd floor, the atmosphere was anything but admiring. Harold Benton, the company's co-founder, slammed the morning paper onto the boardroom table. His ruddy face glistened with anger. His gray hair was slicked back in defiance of time. "We're becoming a circus, Michael. Our clients don't pay us to go viral." Ethan Cole, sitting beside him, smirked nervously. In his mid-30s, with sharp cheekbones and a permanent air of calculation, Ethan looked like a man who thought manipulation was an art form. "The comments are calling us elitists, Harold. Maybe we should make an example of her. A suspension, at least." Michael Reed leaned back in his chair, arms folded, eyes half-shadowed. The weekend's images hadn't left him. He had watched the videos quietly, not as a CEO, but as a man who had forgotten what decency looked like. "She didn't break any rules," he said. "She broke protocol," Harold snapped. "She made us look small." "She made you look small," Michael replied evenly. "Not us." The silence cracked like glass. Ethan chuckled dryly. "Come on, Michael. You really think she didn't plan this? It's all too perfect. The dress, the quote, the dog. Viral gold. You've been played by your own assistant." Michael turned to him, voice low but steady. "You've read her file, haven't you?" Ethan blinked. "Her file?" Michael reached into his briefcase and tossed a manila folder onto the table. 3 years here, and none of you bothered. UNESCO Literacy Grant, International Project Coordinator, Bilingual Education Specialist. She ran a cross-cultural program before any of us knew what the word meant. Ethan paled. Harold's jaw clenched. Michael's tone hardened. "You think she planned it? That woman spent her weekends teaching refugees to read. The only thing she's ever planned is how to keep her head high while the rest of us look down." Downstairs in the HR department, Carla Jennings was hunched over her desk. Carla was in her 40s, short, round-shouldered, with kind brown eyes and a nervous smile. She had seen enough office politics to know when something dangerous was brewing. Her manager stood behind her. "Prepare the paperwork," he ordered. "Violation of company image. Include the dog issue." Carla hesitated. "Sir, Rangers certified. I saw the documents myself." "Then find something else," he barked. "No one embarrasses Benton and walks away smiling." Moments later, the glass doors opened, and Olivia walked in. She wore a beige coat, her hair in a simple bun, no makeup. Behind her, Ranger padded silently, his harness polished, his eyes alert. "Morning, Carla," Olivia greeted softly. Carla swallowed hard. "Good morning, Miss Parker. There's been talk." "I know." Olivia smiled faintly. "It's fine." Before Carla could answer, the manager appeared holding a printed document. "Miss Parker, we're reviewing your participation in Saturday's event. There are questions about your guest." Olivia looked him in the eye. "You mean Ranger?" "Yes. Animals are not permitted at company events without authorization." Olivia opened her folder and slid a paper across the desk. "Authorization signed by Mr. Benton himself, last November." The man froze. His mouth opened, then closed. Carla looked down to hide her grin. "Is there anything else?" Olivia asked politely. He shook his head. "No, that will be all." As she walked away, Ranger's claws clicked softly against the marble floor, the only sound in a hallway full of silent faces. That evening, the partners gathered again in the boardroom. The windows glowed with city light, reflecting their anxious faces. Victoria Hale was there too. She hadn't been invited, but she came anyway. Her expression was flawless, but her mascara smudged faintly at the corners. "You let her humiliate you, Michael," she hissed. "You let her become the story." Michael met her gaze. "No, Victoria. She is the story because we stopped being one worth telling." She scoffed. "Don't do this moral martyr act. You're just trying to fix your conscience by worshiping some charity girl with a dog." Michael's voice was quiet, but razor sharp. "You're wrong. She's not fixing me. She's reminding me who I used to be." The words struck her harder than a shout. Victoria's face twisted, her voice trembling. "She's turned you into a joke, Michael." He leaned forward, eyes dark as storm glass. "No, Victoria. She's turned the joke back into truth." She stared at him, searching for the man who once worshipped her beauty, and found only distance. That night, Michael sat alone in his office. The city shimmered beneath him, cold and endless. The cursor blinked on an empty page. He began to type. "We have forgotten the people behind the numbers. We have replaced integrity with efficiency." And somewhere along the way, we stopped looking each other in the eye. He paused, watching the reflection of his tired face in the glass. Behind him, the office was silent. Only Ranger's distant bark from the lobby below echoed faintly, grounding him back to the world that still cared. He typed one last line. "It's time to remember what made us human." He saved the document. The title glowed softly on the screen. "We forgot the people behind the numbers." The rain came softly that morning, threading over Fifth Avenue like fine silk. Cars whispered by in gray streams. Umbrellas bloomed like black flowers, and the city seemed to breathe slower than usual, as if New York itself had paused to read the morning paper. In every coffee shop, in every glass tower, one headline gleamed from the front page. "CEO Michael Reed admits failure. We were blind to human worth." The photo beneath showed him standing before the press, suit darkened by rain, no PR team beside him. A man alone, finally stripped of polish. He had announced a temporary leave from Reed and Benton, and in the same breath proposed a new initiative, the Community Investment Lab, a program designed to reconnect the company with the people it had ignored: small business owners, underfunded schools, working families. And in a single line that startled the industry, he named Olivia Parker to lead it. In a small park tucked between two apartment blocks, Olivia sat on a wooden bench beneath a maple tree, the newspaper folded neatly beside her. The rain had slowed to a mist, turning the air silver. Ranger, her German shepherd, sat close by, his black and tan coat wet but glistening, nose resting on her knee. He was 6 years old now, built broad and steady, a calm sentinel who seemed to understand the weight of human hearts. Olivia traced a raindrop as it ran down the paper headline. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even surprised. But confusion lingered, an ache born not of distrust, but of disbelief. Had Michael Reed truly changed? Or was this simply another chapter in a man's redemption written for an audience? Her phone buzzed, dozens of unread messages, news reporters, journalists, strangers. One stood out. From Thomas Green, Chronicle. He means it, you know. I've seen fakes. He's not one. Not anymore. She smiled faintly, remembering the journalist from the gala, the one who had asked about Elegance, his gray beard wet with champagne light. There had been truth in his eyes that night. She closed the phone and turned to Ranger. What do you think, boy? Can a man rebuild his heart? Ranger tilted his head, amber eyes searching her face, then pressed his muzzle gently against her hand. His answer wordless, but loyal. The sound of footsteps drew near. She turned, and there he was. Michael Reed, no longer the impenetrable executive. His hair, darkened by rain, clung to his forehead. He wore no tie, no umbrella, only a long navy coat over a gray sweater. His sharp jawline was softened by exhaustion and sincerity. In his hands, 2 paper cups steamed. I wasn't sure if you'd be here, he said quietly. Olivia met his eyes, the same eyes that once dismissed her in boardrooms, now stripped bare of armor. You shouldn't be, either. The press must be feeding on this. He gave a dry laugh. They always feed on something. I figured I'd rather give them the truth. He offered her one of the coffees. No sugar, I remembered. She hesitated, then accepted. You read my file too well. I read it too late, he admitted. The rain picked up, drumming softly on the bench's wooden slats. Michael sat beside her, elbows on knees, gaze fixed on the blurred skyline. You were right, he said finally. We forgot the people behind the numbers. I forgot. I don't expect forgiveness, but then don't ask for it. She interrupted gently. He looked at her. The calm in her tone struck harder than anger would have. She continued, if you want to build something that matters, do it because it should exist, not because it redeems you." Michael's expression shifted, half pain, half clarity. "That's why I came. The lab isn't about me anymore. It's about giving people a voice. And you want me to lead it." "Yes," he said simply. "If you say no, I'll still build it. But if you say yes, I'll learn faster." A gust of wind blew through the park, sending droplets scattering across their coats. Ranger stood, tail flicking once, then settled again, eyes moving between them like an unspoken witness. Olivia watched Michael carefully, the rain gliding down his face like a baptism of humility. For a moment, she saw not the CEO, but a man who had finally stopped running from himself. She exhaled, slowly. "I'll do it," she said, "but not to fix you. I'll do it for those who never had anyone to listen to them." Michael nodded once, a quiet, almost reverent gesture. "Then teach me how to listen." Ranger barked softly, a single sound that cut through the drizzle. It was almost a blessing. Both of them laughed, the kind that carried relief instead of amusement. They sat in silence after that, sipping coffee as the city moved around them. Gray skies above, wet streets below, and something fragile but luminous between them. When Olivia finally stood to leave, Michael remained seated, watching her and Ranger walk toward the edge of the park. He whispered, barely audible, "Thank you for showing me what I couldn't see." Ranger glanced back once, amber eyes glinting under the rain, before they disappeared into the mist. The rain had passed, leaving the streets of Brooklyn gleaming like wet glass. The air smelled faintly of asphalt and coffee, and above the skyline, a shy sun pushed through the clouds, fragile but determined. On the corner of Maple and 12th, an old brick high school had been reborn. Once filled with lockers and chalk dust, it now carried a new sign carved in brushed steel: the Community Investment Lab. Inside, the scent of fresh paint mingled with brewed coffee and nervous excitement. Folding chairs lined the auditorium, now transformed into a multi-purpose hall. A banner hung across the back wall, hand-painted by neighborhood kids, reading, "Law, Life, and Learning." Olivia Parker stood near the stage, adjusting the mic with careful fingers. She wore a soft pink blouse, the color of early dawn, tucked neatly into navy trousers. Her hair was tied loosely, a few strands falling over her temples as she spoke with volunteers. Ranger, her 6-year-old German shepherd, sat calmly at her feet, tail brushing against the wooden floor. Around his neck hung a blue ribbon with the words, "Community Guardian." Children giggled each time they passed him, whispering secrets he seemed to solemnly guard. From the back of the room, Michael Reed watched quietly. He had traded his tailored suits for a simple shirt with rolled-up sleeves, looking more like a teacher than a former CEO. His once polished confidence had softened into something humbler, a man rebuilding not his brand, but his purpose. "Ready?" he asked softly when Olivia turned. "As ready as anyone trying to rebuild faith," she replied. He smiled faintly. "Then let's start with hope." The event began with laughter, clinking cups, and hesitant applause. People from every corner of the borough had come: factory workers, shop owners, single mothers, retired teachers. They filled out forms, asked questions, took notes. At one table, Mrs. Gomez, a 60-year-old widow with silver curls and a voice like worn velvet, spoke about losing her small grocery store after an unfair rent hike. At another, Darius, a 19-year-old with paint-splattered hands and sharp eyes, asked how to register his mural business legally. Olivia moved between them like a calm current, answering with warmth and precision. Ranger followed, lying near children, drawing with chalk on the floor. Every time a child reached to pet him, his tail thumped gently, a quiet reassurance that peace could be loyal too. By afternoon, the hall buzzed with the rhythm of purpose. Then the door opened, and silence followed. A tall man in a black overcoat entered, carrying a clipboard and the air of unwelcome authority. He was Inspector Callahan from the city's Department of Licensing, a man in his 50s with thinning gray hair, steel-rimmed glasses, and the expression of someone who took pride in paperwork more than people. Behind him trailed Ethan Cole, his smirk faint but poisonous. He had come dressed in a gray three-piece suit, sharp as a blade, pretending to check on progress. Callahan's voice was clipped. "Miss Parker, we've received a complaint. Your center is operating without a full set of municipal permits. Until those are cleared, you must suspend activity immediately." Olivia blinked, stunned. "We filed every document required. I have copies right here." Ethan stepped forward. "Rumors travel fast, Olivia. People think this is some publicity stunt. Better to clear things up before it embarrasses everyone." Michael's eyes darkened. "You reported us?" Ethan shrugged. "Just doing due diligence?" Around them, conversations died. Volunteers exchanged anxious looks. Parents began collecting their children. The fluorescent lights flickered once, as if the building itself felt the tremor of fear. Callahan turned to his aide. "Cut the power until inspection is complete." The lights went out. For a heartbeat, There was only darkness, the sound of rain beginning again outside, tapping the roof like hesitant fingers. Then came a voice, Olivia's voice, calm, firm. "We don't need perfection to begin," she said, her tone echoing softly through the hall. "We only need to begin, to find what can be perfect." Someone's phone light flicked on, then another, and another. Soon the entire room glowed with hundreds of small lights, screens and flashlights raised high. Mothers held phones above strollers. Teenagers used their camera flashes. Even old Mrs. Gomez lifted her flip phone like a torch. People stayed. They filled out their forms by phone light. They told their stories again, louder this time. Darius passed his sketchbook around for signatures. Michael printed out copies from his laptop battery, handing them to anyone who needed one. And through it all, Ranger lay at the center of the hall, head on his paws, eyes reflecting the glow of 100 tiny suns. The inspector stood frozen, unable to speak. Finally, he cleared his throat. "You're technically still in violation." Olivia looked at him gently. "Then maybe the city needs to catch up to its people." He didn't argue. He just turned, hesitated, and left. Ethan followed, his smirk gone. Later that night, someone, no one knew who, posted a photo online. It showed the darkened hall lit only by phone screens. In the center stood a woman in a plain pink blouse, her hand on the microphone, her German shepherd lying at her feet. The caption read, "When power went out, people became the light." By morning, the photo had been shared across the city. The mayor's office called. Sponsors reached out. The lab would stay open, permanently. And in a quiet corner of Brooklyn, a forgotten school glowed again. The sun fell softly across 8th Avenue, spilling light through the tall windows of the community lab. The building was no longer new. The walls carried scuff marks, bulletin boards overflowed with flyers, and the floor bore traces of muddy sneakers and dog paws. But that was the beauty of it. The place was alive. Children's laughter echoed down the hallway. Someone in the back room was playing a guitar out of tune. The smell of cinnamon bread from Mrs. Davis's bakery down the street mingled with the hum of coffee machines. At a long wooden table, Olivia Parker sat surrounded by files and sunlight. She had grown softer around the edges, not weaker, but gentler, like someone who had learned to breathe again. A simple gray sweater hung loosely over her shoulders. Her hair, darker now, was tied in a low bun. Across from her lay a small stack of papers, stories of victory written in ink and resilience. Mrs. Davis 62, the widow with the silver curls, had finally received her full pension after months of petitions and meetings. Olivia smiled as she flipped through the final letter from the city office. Next came Liam Turner, the 19-year-old warehouse worker with an easy grin and calloused hands. His overtime pay dispute had been settled last month. He had brought donuts the next morning, calling Ranger the luckiest lawyer in New York. And finally, Chloe Grant, now 18, the girl who once came here trembling with her mother's divorce papers, had been accepted into Columbia University's law program on a full scholarship. A soft knock came from the door. Michael Reed stepped inside, holding 2 cups of coffee and a brown paper bag. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his tie crooked in the way that meant he'd been running late. He looked different from the man who once ruled boardrooms. The angles of his face had softened. The storm in his eyes had turned into something warm and steady. He placed the bag on the table. Breakfast delivery from Mrs. Davis herself. She said to remind you to eat before you start saving the world again. Olivia chuckled. She only says that because she knows I forget. Michael set the coffee down and took a seat beside her. You call this forgetting. I call it obsession with good outcomes. Ranger lifted his head from under the table, tail sweeping slowly against the floor, his muzzle flecked with gray now, but his gaze still bright as firelight. Michael reached down to scratch behind his ears. Hey, partner, still keeping her honest? Ranger gave a short huff, a dignified approval. The door opened again, and a voice called out, cheerful and nervous. Miss Parker, Mr. Reed, guess what? It was Chloe. She burst into the room, still wearing her public school blazer, eyes glowing. In her hands was a thick envelope with the Columbia seal. Olivia stood, heart rising. You did it, Chloe nodded, laughing through tears. They said yes, full ride, and she hesitated, then blurted out, I'm going to study law. I want to be like you. The room stilled. Even Ranger's tail paused. Olivia smiled, that soft, knowing smile that came from years of weathering storms. She reached out, brushing a tear from Chloe's cheek. No, she said gently. You'll be like you. That's what makes this world better. One person brave enough to be themselves. Chloe threw her arms around her, and the room erupted in applause. Volunteers from the next room peeked in, clapping. Mrs. Davis, who had dropped by with pastries, wiped her eyes with her apron. Michael watched it all quietly, a small smile curving his lips. For once, he didn't feel like a man watching from behind glass. He was part of the picture, imperfect, human, present. Later that afternoon, a young journalist from the Chronicle, a new intern named Lena Brooks, barely 23, with bright green eyes, and a recorder clutched nervously in her hands, arrived for an interview. "So," she asked, fidgeting, "everyone keeps asking, what are you two to each other?" Olivia and Michael exchanged a look. Michael leaned back, eyes crinkling. "Two people who did a lot of wrong things," he said, "and are learning, one day at a time, how to do them right." Lena smiled, lowering her recorder. "That's not the usual answer I get." "That's because it's not the usual story," Olivia said softly. Outside the window, the light shifted golden. Kids played tag in the courtyard. Ranger barked once, as if cheering them on. By evening, the hall had emptied. Volunteers packed up forms, folded chairs, and laughed about whose coffee order had been wrong. Olivia stayed behind to lock up. The sky outside had turned indigo, and puddles shimmered on the street, reflecting the city's 1,000 lights. She turned off the last switch, plunging the room into gentle twilight. Ranger stood beside her, pressing his head lightly against her leg. She looked down at him, whispering, "Not everyone who wears a pink dress is a princess, right?" His tail thumped once against the floor. "Some of us," she continued, staring at the neon lights mirrored in the puddles, "just try to stand tall in the dark and still shine." The reflection of her and Ranger glowed faintly in the glass, two silhouettes framed by light, neither seeking glory, only meaning. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the hum of the city they had helped heal, Olivia knew this was what true victory looked like. Not applause, not fame, but peace. There are miracles that do not arrive with thunder or light. They whisper through the quiet moments when people choose kindness over pride, forgiveness over fear. Sometimes God does not send angels with wings. He sends ordinary souls. A woman in a pink dress who refuses to give up. A man who learns to listen. A loyal dog who guards hope in silence. The world doesn't always change through grand gestures. It changes when we look at each other and finally see, when we lend a hand, when we forgive, when we believe that light still exists, even in the smallest corners of the city. And perhaps that is God's greatest miracle, that He allows broken people to become the hands that heal. So if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that grace is real, and that no act of goodness ever goes unseen. Tell us in the comments, what miracle has quietly changed your life? Share this story so that another heart may find hope again. subscribe to the channel for more stories of faith, love, and redemption. And may God bless you. May He walk beside you in the storms, speak to you in silence, and remind you always that even in the darkest night, light still belongs to you.